Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Refine Your Job Search Strategy webinar hosted by the Business School Alumni Network. I'm Allie Klymans. I am the Vice Chair of Events for the BSAN. I got my MBA from CU Denver in 2016. I currently work in marketing and communications here in Denver, supporting nonprofits and corporate social responsibility campaigns. Just a couple housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar is going to be recorded and it will be emailed out to everybody after this is over. If you are having technical difficulties, please use the chat function below. And if you have questions for our panel during the event, please use the Q&A function. We'll get to questions at the end. We're going to try and get to as many as possible. Just to give you guys a little bit of background, like I mentioned, this is hosted by the Business School Alumni Network. This is a great opportunity to get involved, to network, and as you'll hear, to get some more resources that are all free to you, provided because you went to CU Denver. You can check out our website, which is right here on the screen. That's a great place to see the executive committee and get involved in our upcoming events as well. And with that, it is my pleasure to welcome our team today. I'm going to introduce Caitlin, who is our moderator. Caitlin spent the past 10 years working in roles within division orders, lease records, and land in the oil and gas industry in Denver before very recently, pivoting into a senior financial analyst role in the telecom industry. She received her undergraduate degree in finance from CU Boulder and graduated with her MBA from CU Denver in December of 2020. As a proud alumna, she's a member of the CU Denver's BSAN, and in her free time, Caitlin enjoys gardening, traveling, attending musicals, speed walking, and doing genealogy research. With that, Caitlin, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Allie. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm so happy that you are here with us. And I am pleased to be able to introduce our panelists, Erin, MJ, and Tracy. And I'm going to ask each of them to go ahead and introduce themselves. So we will start with MJ. If you want to please introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm MJ. I'm the lead recruiter at AT&T for the Western and Mountain regions. I'm here in Southern California. I started with AT&T 10 years ago. I was 19 years old in undergrad, probably in the same positions as many of you are as you're starting to think about your future careers and what you'll do after college and during this transition. I did my undergrad at Ohio State University and went to grad school at Colorado State University. Yeah, I've had a crazy career with AT&T and I'm looking forward to chatting with you all.
Thank you, MJ. Happy to have you here. And next, I'd like Tracy, if you could please introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. My name is Tracy McDonald. I am the Vice President of Talent at Merge, which is a digital agency based out of Chicago. Formerly Blue Moon Digital, which is a local company, a digital marketing company here in Denver. Merge just purchased us a couple months ago, so we are still kind of going through the transitions of names and what that looks like. I went to CU for undergrad and grad school. My undergrad in sociology, I got a master's in counseling psychology and counselor education from CU Denver, and then transitioned into HR, where I've been for the last 12-ish plus years. So my role spans across all facets of HR. If it touches you as an employee, then it comes across my desk in one way or another. So really excited to be here today.
Thank you, Tracy. Welcome. And last but not least, if we could have Erin, if you could please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Doty. I am a career consultant in the Business Career Connections office at the Business School. I previously came from the lead school of business at CU Boulder, and prior to that was a recruiter at a large corporate tech company. My academic background is my master's degree in counseling from CSU, and I'm happy to be here and chat with you all today.
Thank you, Erin. Welcome, and welcome everyone again to our webinar. We have 3 amazing panelists for you. I just wanted to start with a little introduction. This webinar for me is very personal because, as Ali mentioned, I recently just went through a very large career pivot where I'd been working in oil and gas for 10 years, and it was a great industry. I loved working in it, but I was really looking for some new opportunities, and I just started this week at a new role in the telecom industry, doing something completely different. And I think a lot of people are experiencing this same sort of change. Per the Society for Human Resource Management in November 2021, 4.5 million people quit their jobs. And we assume to go do something new or different. And that is a record number. So 3% of the workforce quit their jobs at the end of last year. And so that's really why we wanted to have this webinar today, because of that. And we know that making a job change can be really difficult. And this whole great resignation, as it's been called, we've also heard it called the great reevaluation, is something that is really relevant to a lot of people. So hopefully you all find this content really helpful. Because I know for me, this was all very personal for me, something that I went through. And I hope at the end of this, you find some great resources and some optimism that it is possible to make a change in your career or move up in your career or start your career, whatever it is that you are all looking for. And so with that, we will launch right into our first question. And that is, what are the current trends that you are all noticing in the job market or with applicants right now? So who of our panelists would like to start us off?
I'll go ahead. So in my role as a career counselor, I work directly one-on-one with students, and I'm seeing a lot of students who are wanting to make a lot of pivots in their career. So I think everything in the world that has happened in the last few years has really allowed and made room for people to rethink what they want to be doing. And that kind of includes switching roles, switching industries, really pivoting their careers in large ways, and also just reevaluating their values of what's important to them in a career. So seeing a lot of people wanting more of a remote style work environment, different types of values of what's important to them in their career, and just kind of wanting to see how that they can go about that way to make those changes in their career. So a lot of values, and then also a lot of industry changes as well.
I think I've also seen a lot of entrepreneurship too. So like there's been a lot of people the last, 5 to 10 years. My husband and I are one of these people. We're serial entrepreneurs. We, own our own businesses, and are involved in different things. And I've seen a lot of people also really pivot to pursuing their businesses 100% as well. So a lot of people leaving industry and going into like giving 100% to their personal businesses.
I think one thing that I've noticed a lot on the hiring side from a business perspective is that there's the pace at which a person goes through an interview process or gets hired has substantially, I would say, increased. So what used to be like an interview process of maybe going, 2 weeks to get a job, it's now been shortened down to a week, 1 to maybe 2 interviews, which is just kind of swirling a bunch of heads right now at the pace that companies are just trying to scoop up these applicants in. It is really a job shopper's market right now, with the amount of companies that are hiring and just how quickly we're trying to get people in the door.
Thank you all for that. And Tracy, you really helped us launch into our next question, which is, how are candidates reevaluating their relationship to work, the interests and the values that maybe they're considering? So if you want to maybe provide us some more context on that.
Sure. And yeah, something that I've definitely noticed in interviews, a lot of times folks will be asking about sustainability practices of the company. They'll talk about DE&I practices. They want to know what resonates with them as a person and how is a company showcasing that. And it's super important for a company, super important for a candidate, and it's great to hear that those conversations are really taking place in the interview process in the get-go. So candidates really feel good about the company that they're joining.
That is great. Thank you. And I also wanted to kind of take this moment to highlight that the Business Career Connections at CU Denver's Business School has a lot of great resources on their website about if you are looking for a new industry and different, where you can go and look at different industries, different companies within those industries, as well as some personal resources as to what are your interests, what are your values, some things that you can take some personal inventories, as it were. So I definitely recommend you all to take a look at the website for Business Career Connections, because there's a lot of great resources there as well for students and alum. And so we'll go into our next question now, which is how can those who are job searching make their degree work for them? So for example, if leveraging your degree in an interview, especially when your degree might not be a job requirement, maybe they're looking for more relevant work experience. So how do you make your degree work for you? And who would like to kick us off for that question?
I'm happy to jump in. My degree, for example, is the master's degree that I got was in counseling psychology and counselor education. I'm in human resources. A little bit different. HR typically asks for an MBA or a degree in HR of some sort. So I was able to pivot into a slightly different world by pulling on a lot of those core classes within counseling that I took. The people aspect of HR, of course, is very important. It's the number one piece of HR, I would argue. So pulling on a lot of the core pieces of what your degree is and how that can match up to a job that is in your vertical, that is in a different vertical, pulling on projects that you've done. I think that's really important to highlight because that shows how you're able to translate something that is either similar or dissimilar into the role that you're looking for. And that's really what employers are, they're looking to see if you can pull on those strings and make the connection for them.
I think also, I mean, we'll cover this, I think, in some of the future questions too, but I think employers, as a recruiter, we're looking for applicable skills, right? Like how have you applied what you've learned in school to real world, situations or obstacles? And so I think what's really important on resumes is project work, right? And so if you're majoring in a certain major and you're applying for a job where, hey, having that major helps, but most companies, right, are really looking for skill sets and experience, but perhaps you don't have that experience, right? I always joked, I'm like, we're looking at jobs, we're applying to jobs, and they want 8 years of this experience and 10 years of that experience. Like, I just freaking graduated college. Like, I'm not gonna have 10 years of marketing experience, right? So I think it's really important with your degree is to think about like the classes you took, what projects you did in those classes, right? If you're a freshman or a sophomore just starting out, or if you've already graduated, go back, think about all the different projects, right? Look through all your emails and your submissions and your folders on your computer and kind of handpick projects that are specific to the jobs that you're applying for and put those on your resume with those specific skills, right? If it's a sales role that's specifically, and you worked on a project where you had to maybe outreach 3 different companies to find information, right? You're cold calling these companies. That is a skill that would be great in a sales position. So make sure you put that type of project down and put those bullet points that have like that related, or applicable skill.
Thank you. That is really great advice. And you kind of led into our next question as well, MJ, which is how do candidates leverage their current skills to get a different job in a different industry without starting out entry level again. So for me, this was something that was very relevant, and not wanting, I had 10 years of experience, not wanting to start all over again in my career, but really learn how to translate my skills into a new job I hadn't done before. And so how would you recommend that students or alum go about doing that?
Yeah, for sure. So very similarly, right? I've been with AT&T for 10 years. My first 6 years with the company, I was promoted 5 times, right? And each role was a new role that I had no experience in. So I started in sales. Then I said, hey, look, I have no finance or operations experience. So then I applied for a role in finance and operations and got it. And then I said, hey, I don't have any management experience. Well, obviously a promotion is you're going into a role that's bigger than the current role you're doing, right? And so I had no experience managing employees. I didn't have direct reports. I was 21, 22. I hadn't even finished undergrad yet when I became a manager, and I was managing people, who were 10 plus years older than me. And that was the role I was, and there's like 15 of them. And so I think that when we're thinking about how you can leverage skill sets, right? Similar to the last question, when you're trying to move into, a different industry or within the same industry even, and just into a role with more responsibilities. The best way to do that is, the best way to get a job that you want that is higher than your current job is to be doing that job in your current job, right? And so finding opportunities in your current roles like that you can apply certain skills. Like for example, if you are, let's say an entry-level employee and you're trying to go into, let's say, become a data analyst. Even though your role may not have anything to do with data, may not have anything to do in that tech field. However, is there an opportunity that you can use data to further inform your business decisions day to day? If yes, is it in your job description? No, but you want a job with that in the description, right? So you have to kind of almost self-create work for yourself in your current role, so then that by the time you are ready to apply for these jobs, you've already vetted, your resume is vetted, you've already been doing these things. I used to coach internal employees at AT&T, and I would tell them, if you're planning to start when you find the role you're interested, you're already too late. You have to start ahead of time. And so I think thinking about, if you're still in school, right, and you still have a couple years to go, thinking about what are different things that you can do to acquire more skills. Is it joining a club that is a specific project-based club? I hire a lot in the sales industry, and I usually tell students, go volunteer, right? Volunteer for a fundraising chair position. No one would say, oh, fundraising is the same as sales, right? But it is. In fundraising, you're cold calling people to try to get them to give you money. That's sales. You're selling them yourself. You're selling them your business. You're selling them your nonprofit, right? And so finding some of those similarities, I think, in the skill sets, doing them before you plan to apply. So then that you're saying, hey, hire me for this or give me this promotion because look, I've already been doing it. That is the best position you can be in.
That was an excellent answer. Thank you so much for that. And we're going to move on now to our next question. And I want to bring Erin in and have her answer this question. What recommendations do you have for strengthening your skill set beyond just your work experience to make your resume or cover letter stand out? So like MJ kind of mentioned, maybe volunteering, board positions, certifications, courses, etc.
Yeah, definitely want to add to what MJ said. There are lots of other ways that you can kind of add to your skill set. I think doing certificates that are required for the roles and also doing additional learning in different ways. So through LinkedIn Learning, there's a lot of free courses that you have access to, students, and I'm not sure about alums, sorry. But also you can also learn some of these skills on YouTube, just that you have a basic knowledge of a certain type of skill that's required in a job description is a really great way to add to your resume. So similarly to what MJ said, start doing those things before you want to apply. So be looking at job descriptions, looking at those requirements, the skills that they require. And if you don't have them, go and learn them. So learn them through LinkedIn Learning, through YouTube. If there's other experiences that they want you to have, go volunteer somewhere. See if you can add on or just take on additional duties in your work. So, okay, if it's not part of your job description, is there an opportunity for you to still do that as part of your day-to-day work? So really taking advantage of resources that will prepare you for the jobs you're looking for.
I think also being strategic with your like internship opportunities, right? Like thinking back to what you did in your internships, how they can relate to the new jobs that you're applying for. And I would always say never let a summer go wasted for those of you who are still in undergrad and still pursuing internships. Even if you don't get an internship, like sometimes I get it, like you're a freshman or a sophomore, you're competing with juniors and seniors for these internships, right? So sometimes you may not get selected. Well, don't let that summer, go to waste. Pick up a part-time job, right? That may have some of those skill sets that can help you build your resume. It may not be specific, right? To a specific role, but you may be building a skill set that is pretty broad and applicable to a lot of different roles, or even volunteering for the summer. And volunteering, like I had a freshman who was a computer science major, and those are very competitive jobs that we recruit for. And so, they weren't able to get a summer internship. And I said, go find a nonprofit with the crappiest, the worst website you've ever seen in your life, and reach out to them and offer to redo their entire website for the summer. And you can put that on your resume, right? That was what you did for the summer. And even better is that there's like actual proof, right? Like you could literally list the website on your resume and they can click it and they can see it. So doing things like that to continue building out those skill sets. I think applicable skills, applied skills are like top priority on resumes.
And one more thing to add to that, if I may, a lot of companies do job shadowing and in addition to an internship program, which is just kind of a free, brief 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, go and kind of shadow somebody at work. Everybody has connections there that they know that are in the working world, your parents, your friends, your coworkers, your peers, whoever it is, reach out to them and say, hey, does your company do something like this? I just want to just kind of shadow somebody around for a couple of weeks. That gets your name on their radar. So if there is an internship that comes up, you can move to the top of the list and be like, hey, I shadowed you last summer. Is this something that's available for me this summer? So get your name to be more relevant.
Thank you all. That is excellent advice. And so now I'd like to make a pivot a little bit in talking about if you're in an industry or a role and you're really looking to get a promotion or a higher level job. So how would you advise someone to go about pursuing a higher level job in their current industry, either at their current company or going to another company in a role that would be considered a promotion? So MJ, why don't you kick us off with that question?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it kind of goes along the same lines of what we've been talking about, right? If you want a promotion, prove to them that you've already been doing the job that you're applying for. And essentially your perspective is, hey, look, here's my resume. I'm applying for this role. Look, I've already been doing it. You're just giving me the title to do it, right? And the pay adjustment to do it. I'm already doing it. So really being able to say that in an interview, I mean, obviously more eloquently, right? Of like, hey, here's my, here's my, scope of work that I've done. But then I think also preparing, when you're looking at interviewing and getting promoted, I think you have to prepare and you have to practice. If your last experience was interviewing for the existing job that you have, right? When you go and you apply for a promotion or even in a new company or new industry, interviewing changes like rapidly. Like the way you interviewed for a job a month ago is going to be significantly different from the way you interview a month later. And so for me, for example, the last time I interviewed, like actually interviewed for a job for a promotion was 5 years ago. I've been in this recruiting role for 5 years. And so as we're looking, right, everyone's looking at this open job market. I'm looking at stuff in this open job market, right? And I'm like, oh, I I haven't interviewed in a while. And so I think one way to really prepare is you have to do mock interviews. You have to practice, use your career center. You have so many, as alum and as existing students, you have so many resources to you. And also don't forget your professors too, right? If you're applying for a specific job in a specific industry, some of those professors may come from that industry. Some of those people in the career center may come from that industry. Take advantage of those office hours and use that to your benefit to help you prepare. I think also, as much as we hate to hear it, it also is all about networking. It's not so much like, oh, I know you, and so I'm going to get the job. It's not about that. Obviously, you still have to be qualified, right? However, I think doing your due diligence, making sure, right, that you're spending the time, for example, to rewrite resumes every single time. I think a lot of students submit the same resumes for multiple jobs. You shouldn't be doing that. Like every job you apply to is significantly different. You should be rewriting your resume, right? And then also making sure that you're networking with all of these different jobs. Joining events like this helps you get in front of recruiters for these types of roles. Making sure you do, events through your university. I know a lot of, LinkedIn is a really great way to connect, and just making sure that you're always, marketing yourself. One of the first jobs I was ever, first professional jobs, right, in college, I was a sushi waitress. And there just happened to be a guy that was a regular that came to eat all the time at my sushi restaurant who owned a huge law firm in Ohio. And it was just through talking and interacting with them that he actually offered my first job as an executive assistant to his law firm, right? And so making sure you're always hustling, right, to find that opportunity and marketing yourself is really important as you're looking for that promotion within your industry. And I think also my last point, don't come across desperate, right? I feel like I used to have this joke with a guy I dated a long time ago, and not a long time, it was 5 years ago. And I was dating him, and he had 3 sisters. All of them were single. And he would tell me how they would go to a bar, to an event, and they would it would be so obvious that they were seeking to meet somebody there, right? To be able to socialize with someone. So it was very obvious that that was their intent. When you're job seeking, whether it's because you really hate the job that you're at now, whether it's because you really, really, really want a promotion, whether you're whatever the reason is, don't be desperate in the end, right? I have people who are applying for jobs just because they want to get out of what they're currently doing. Recruiters can sense that. We can sense that in an interview and in a conversation. Recruiters want people to apply and interview with us who are passionate about the company, who are passionate about the job, who are passionate about what they're going to be doing, not people who are passionate about just getting out of what they're currently in, right? So make sure you do your research, right? You research the company, you really self-analyze. Why am I applying for these jobs? Why am I trying to get out of what I'm in now? And make sure that your mind and the way you're portraying yourself comes across well to the recruiter too. Because I've definitely interviewed people. I'm like, okay, so you literally, know nothing about our company, you know nothing about this job, and you just applied because you're tired of your current job. Got it, right? That's not a good enough reason for an employer to hire you. So you really have to do your due diligence on that part. And that's all I have to say, sorry.
Oh, that was excellent. Thank you, MJ. And so our next question, then I'll ask Erin and Tracy to kind of chime in on our next question, which is, what are some different ways to find new jobs? So we know that job boards, applying directly is always an option, but what about networking, as MJ mentioned, or working with a recruiter, things like that? So Erin, if you want to start us off.
Yeah, so I always talk to students about this, right? So yes, applying to job boards and specifically applying to company websites, I think is a more preferred way if you want to choose that single route of applications. And similar to a couple of things that MJ touched on, my biggest piece of advice is for people to be intentional with their job search. So don't just throw out 100 resumes because you want to be doing something and you want to get a job and you just feel all of the pressure to get a job. Really be intentional with your search. What types of companies, what are their missions? Why are you applying to this role and this company specifically? That also means that you have to then tailor your resume, tailor your cover letter. And the biggest piece I do think is networking. So If you have network connections that you already know, that's a plus. And that's not common for a lot of the companies that people choose to apply to. So making cold connections through LinkedIn is really the way to go. There's a bunch of ways to do that. You can either search for one CU Denver alum that might be at a company you're interested in. That's already a connection point that you have to reach out to this person. Hey, you're an alum, I'm a current student, or I'm also an alum. I'm really interested in your company. Do you have time for a 30-minute Zoom conversation? Or you can also search for the company specifically and then try to find connections to people that are on a team that you're interested in applying to, that are already in a role that you're interested in applying to. You can try to reach out to the recruiter, and maybe Tracy and MJ have a different perspective. But when I was a recruiter, I really didn't have time to respond to a lot of my LinkedIn connections. So trying to talk to people that are in those roles and build that relationship. So asking them, how did you get into your role? What is the company culture like? Tell me about this. Be curious and ask them questions, build that relationship, and then you can start to talk about, okay, I have applied, or I'm planning to apply. What tips do you have? How can I stand out? Would you be willing to be a referral for me? Or they might offer to be a referral for you. So I think networking is really that top tier strategy in the job search.
And I think one note too with networking, I think career fairs, right, are a really big one. I think my key to career fairs for students is prepare your questions. I think Erin talked about, right, asking the right questions. And so one of the big things with career fairs I remember is, you know, students would, when career fairs were in person before they were virtual, students would wait like 45 minutes in this big long line, you know, to talk to an employer. And then the student would get to me and they'd be like, so what kind of opportunities are there at AT&T? You know, hey, here's my resume. Can you take a look at it? Do you have any feedback? And some of the questions they would ask, like, hey, what opportunities are there? That's like a simple Google search, right? Like you can see what jobs are already available. So being prepared that before you talk to that recruiter, right? Hey, I saw you had this job available. Here's my resume. I have experience in A, B, and C, and I've done X, Y, and Z. What do you think? Do you think this is a job I can apply for? Do you think I'm competitive? How do I get interviewed? What's the process, right? Asking those strategic questions that show that you're prepared really will help you in those networking. It's one thing to network, but it's another to make sure that you're memorable in that networking experience, right? And then I think also is utilize your career services. Again, I'm going to always say career services, mostly because I don't know, I just didn't know when I was an undergrad. You know, I was a first-gen college student. My parents, you know, weren't able to help me pretty much after like 5th grade math, right? Like they never even finished, you know, elementary or high school. They're laborers, you know, they work in blue collar jobs and they just couldn't help me. And so I, like, for example, I never even knew to do an internship. I never used career services to write a resume. I never met with a career counselor. Like I didn't take advantage of these things that my very expensive tuition was paying for. And so I think like utilize those relationships in career services, because those people are people who work directly with the recruiters. Like I'm here today because of someone in your career services offices that I met 3 years ago at a whole different university, right? And so they're bringing in these opportunities, and she'll just send me resumes left and right, you know, for candidates. Those types of people are the people you want to make sure you have a good relationship with, that they know what your goals are, that they know what you're looking for, because they're the ones that can be that first point of contact for you to a recruiter as well.
And to tag along with that and with the networking comments, because I think that is so valuable and agree with that 1000%. Especially when you're on LinkedIn, you have the option to just say, hey, connect with this person, and it shoots it off and you get just this random invitation, right? The deeper you go, like Erin was talking about, and getting to learn somebody on the team and just asking about the culture, and then asking if they would refer you over. A lot of companies have referral programs where that employee could get cash for referring you to come into the company. You get a job, they get a little bonus for throwing your name in the hat. It's a win for everybody, which is like so nice. All it takes is a 15-minute conversation with that person sometimes, and who knows what that could potentially lead to. I will say that I think another great opportunity to network is that there are a lot of conferences, a lot of industry meetups, stuff like that you can attend, where you meet other like-minded individuals, people that are trying to get it, share the same skills. And so somebody may be working at a company that you may want to join, and they're just there to get some more ideas about a specific tech topic or an HR topic or whatever the industry is. It's a great place to go in and talk with people and expand that networking outreach as well. And then I also know that there are multiple companies around town that host recruiting events themselves. They could partner up with, say, like a Built-in Colorado, who used to do a lot of these events where a company would host like a happy hour and say, hey, come and meet these crew, like this company, what they do. There's so many different jobs that fall under a company's umbrella that even if there isn't a job posted specifically at that time, just getting to meet the leaders and people within the company, and again, showing your face, showing your interest, showing that you're excited about who they are and what they do, makes you relevant, and that's where you want to be, is top of mind.
That is excellent. Thank you. And I also just wanted from personal experience to share, don't underestimate the power of informational interviews. That was something for me that was so important in moving to a completely different industry. It was just reaching out to people and say, can I just have, 30 minutes of your time where I just ask you questions about the industry, your experience, the skills that you look for. Maybe it's someone in a role that you would like to be in one day, and just go into that with the mindset of making that connection. It might not lead to a job today, but you never know where it could lead in the future. And it shows that you're interested. So I know for me personally, that was something that was really helpful. So just wanted to share that as well. So we have a few more questions, and then I know we have several Q&A questions that audience members have already submitted. Thank you for that. Keep submitting those. So a few more questions, and we'll launch into audience Q&A. So our next question is, what advice do you have for interviewing virtually versus interviewing in person? And how can we be successful at both? So Tracy, if you want to kick us off with that question.
Sure. I think that one thing that's really important, whether it is virtual or not, is being on time. I actually had this problem today, logging in. Practice with your computer if it's a virtual event, and make sure that you can log in. If it is a link that you click, is it a phone number that you're calling? Is it a specific person? You'll frequently get an invite to a Zoom call or a WebEx or a Google Meet, whatever that is. Make sure that your computer is able to handle that. Like I said earlier today, my computer crashed right as I was logging in. So shame on me. I should have tried it 5 minutes earlier to make sure that when that happened, I could restart my computer and I wasn't scrambling. I will say that it is noticeable when you log in late to a call or to an interview. It just doesn't look good. So learn from me and don't do that. Just practice in advance. I think that is really important. I think also if you're in person, if you're showing up 20, 30 minutes early, don't expect to be seen 20 or 30 minutes early. That's kind of that window of like, holy cow, they're here really, really early, perhaps too early. So I like the kind of 5 to 10 minute window max, and then just being patient, because time is just a premium for everybody. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. That's kind of top of mind for me, but I know Erin probably has some more tidbits with that one.
I agree with what you said. Being too early also kind of does look bad, and definitely being late looks bad. So just prepare. If you have to drive somewhere, maybe drive there the day before if you have access to that. I think also with in-person versus virtual interviews, I see a lot of students that worry that they can't get across what they would be able to in a in-person interview. And I understand that. I get it. You can't really read body language. Some people don't talk with their hands as much as they do virtually as in person. And I still argue that you can still get across your personality and still have a really similar experience from a virtual interview to in person. So just making sure that you're still kind of being bubbly and able to have conversation through your interviews, and being able to communicate. If you didn't hear something, that's understandable. Ask that person to repeat it. With Zoom and virtual meetings, there's a lot of room for people don't hear things or your video glitches and stuff like that, just call it out and say, hey, I kind of froze. Do you mind repeating that? I think with the world really turning into a virtual space, a lot of people are really okay with that. It's pretty common knowledge. I think everyone has had a Zoom mishap in some way or the other. So just, you are still allowed to be yourself in a virtual interview, and it still gets the same point across versus in person.
I think some tips too with virtual versus in-person is like, for example, in an in-person interview, usually between the time that you apply and for when you're, interviewing, let's say for that final round interview, a lot has happened, right? If it's been 2 months, a lot has happened in 2 months. If it's been 6 weeks, a lot has happened in 6 weeks. Make sure you're consistently updating that resume and have it ready before that interview. I know best practice for me that I tell students is when you're coming in for the interview, bring a fresh updated copy of your resume to present to the interviewer the day of your interview. Well, how do you do that if it's virtual, right? So have that ready, right? Screen sharing is a thing. Perhaps you already have the email of that recruiter. Make sure you reach out to them and say, hey, looking forward to our interview today. I just wanted to provide you with a updated copy of my resume, that's relevant. I've done a couple projects that's relevant to what we'll be talking about today, right? And doing that, showing that you're proactive about it. I think also practice makes perfect. I've interviewed a wide scope of candidates, some who are like excellent virtual interviewers, and some who are not very good at virtual interviewing. And I think the key is you have to practice, right? Practice makes perfect. I think, I'm going to sound a little crazy, but talk to yourself. Like, it's weird to see yourself on camera on the screen. So like, open up your Zoom, right, where it's just showing your face, and just talk to yourself as you practice. And the more you talk to yourself, the more you talk through your projects, right? Questions in interviews like, tell me about a time where, and I'm sure your career center, right, can provide you with a list of questions to practice for. Tell me about a time where, you were trying to work on a project, there was an obstacle. What was the obstacle? How did you overcome it, right? Talk through projects that you've run into issues. Step 1, I did this. Step 2, I did that. A lot of our minds, like, because we do so much in undergrad, honestly, I look back and I'm like, I don't even know how I survived school. I slept 3 hours a night, worked 3 part-time jobs, and went to school full time. I have no idea how I did it, but we forget, right? We forget, like, oh yeah, there was that project and this happened, right? So practicing that ahead of time, so then that you already have these speaking points and these talk tracks, and there's a little bit of that muscle memory, right? As you're speaking and thinking about some of these instances, right, as examples to prove to the recruiter why you're the most qualified person for the role. There's a little bit of that muscle memory too of of each of these projects, that because you've already practiced.
Thank you. So I'm going to pass it off now to Allie so we can get some of the audience questions. Before we do that, I just want to say thank you to the panelists, because I will be hopping off here. But I just want to tell everybody that I know this process can be really hard. I went through it myself for the better part of a year, but to hang in there, I promise you can do it, and it will all come out and all be worth it in the end. And good luck to everybody. So now I'd like to pass it off to Allie. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Caitlin. I think one of the questions that came up to me too is specific to Colorado. So about posting salary requirements and kind of posting your benefits. I know that is something, especially like when I went through career change, that was something like, well, when I did it, they didn't have to do that. So, but is really helpful now, right? How can you transition to this new role if the salary requirements are different or your benefits? So why, 2 parts, can you talk a little bit about putting the salary information in that? And I think Tracy, I'll look at you since you're here. And then this is kind of interesting too. Why are there still so many job postings that don't have salary information on it?
Yeah, interesting topic. So Colorado has the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act that was passed last year, which does require companies to post salaries for positions here in Colorado. Now, I would say, to kind of go to your second question, why are there a lot of companies that haven't posted it yet? The last year has been a little bit of trying to figure out how companies handle this. If you've tried shopping for a job prior to 2021, then you probably noticed that a lot of companies are not that transparent with regard to salaries. So this has been a really big shift for companies. And a lot of companies, whether they know about it, they don't know about it, they've subscribed to it or not. Something that I think as a potential candidate for a company, what you're able to do is ask them, what is the salary range for this position? If an employer is asking you, hey, what did you make at your last role? You can boot that question down. You don't have to answer that and say, you know what, actually, I really want to learn more about the role and how my skills are applicable for the role, and make sure that we come up with a fair salary. But that's a really great question, and I would love to know what you have in mind as a salary range for the position. So feel free, that's absolutely, I would say, excellent question to ask the recruiter or the hiring manager, whomever, to give them that answer to you, rather than you out of the gate saying, I'm looking for 50K, 60K, 100K. But yes, I would say companies they're slowly wrapping around it. New York just passed this as well, that they have to be transparent with their pay practices for jobs. So I think it's a trend that's going to pick up a little bit more, but because it's new, it's a little slow going, I would say, still.
Thank you. Yeah, I've definitely noticed that in my in my search as well. Kind of going off of that, what are some tips that you all have about following up with a recruiter or following up with a hiring manager? I know, especially to many points, it's kind of it's a little crazy right now. So a lot of people are applying for a lot of jobs, and I know specifically I've gotten emails that are like, don't reach out to us. We will reach out to you. So I guess, what are some good tips about following up with a recruiter after you submit or after you interview?
I like it. I think absolutely follow up with me. The amount of applicants that I see on a daily basis for one position, let alone the 5 that I'm trying to hire, let alone the 52 that are available at my company right now, like you following up 48 hours to say, hey, just want to check in and see, are there any other questions, 24 hours, I should say, not 48. Are there any other questions that I can answer for you? Can't wait to hear about the next steps. And like, put it out there that you're interested and ready to hear what it's going to take to make it to the next round. Again, make yourself relevant. Don't email me 30 times in the next 24 hours. Know that it is a very busy market, but once to follow up, I think is a really great place to go.
Yeah, I think someone had asked about, regarding following up with a recruiter and a recruiter not following up. I agree with Tracy. Definitely follow up with an email, but don't overdo it. I remember I did end up hiring her because she was a very, very good candidate, but she would do this thing where even if I like just ran into her on campus, I would get an email. So one time, I walked past her in the quad, across the quad, and I got an email later, 3 hours later, hey, it was great running into you, on campus. And then I literally ran into her in the bathroom another time, and hey, it was great running into you again, definitely meter how much you're reaching out, because we are recruiting hundreds and hundreds. I probably look at 600 resumes a week. I probably do 30 to 40 interviews a week. We're meeting a lot of students, so meter what you are sending, but it's good to follow up. Always thank your recruiter for the time that they took to interview you. Thank them for answering your questions, assuming you prepared questions. But with regards to the question someone asked about, well, what if a recruiter is just not following up with me? I would say, for me, I have a practice where I will reach out to students twice. and you'll never hear from me ever again. So I'll reach out to you once. If you're interested, if you want to apply. If you don't respond, I'll probably reach out to you again, like within that same week. And after that, it's like, okay, well, you're just not interested. You applied, but you must not be interested anymore. Let me know if anything changes, right? And then I usually won't reach out again unless that candidate reaches out to me. Sometimes there's family emergencies, there's this, and that. I get it. You know, my family has experienced a lot of death during COVID, and I literally, my boss thought I had died because I ran to the hospital and I was quarantined there for 4 days and my boss didn't hear from me. So I do understand that things like that happen, right? But then I do follow up after, you know, let them know what happened and then reconnect. And so I would say, in the sense of a recruiter, you kind of have to operate the same way, right? Like, don't put all of your eggs in a basket. You should be applying to multiple other jobs as well. Reach out to the recruiter once, reach out to the recruiter twice, let them know you're still interested. After that, if they're still not reaching out, continue, make sure you're still, you know, entertaining these other opportunities. I mean, sometimes, you know, if a recruiter gets busy, if they have their own, you know, emergency, or we had a recruiter on our team who had to actually go on leave for 3 months. You know, things like that happen. I would say, you know, go ahead, reach out 1, 2, maybe even 3 times, you know, and after that, I would say pursue other opportunities. I think that's a harsh reality to face, but at the same time, it's an amazing job market right now, and you should be submitting multiple apps while looking for a new position.
Thank you for that. My next question is a little bit about resources. I think, you know, things like this are super helpful, but especially because everybody that's on this call is affiliated with CU Denver, whether you are still a student, and most of our alumni that we serve. What are some things that the BCC, for instance, offers to alumni, or how can we take advantage of, you know, still connecting through our university to be able to pursue other career opportunities? I was going to say interviews, that too, but opportunities.
So you're always welcome to schedule appointments with us. So I like to describe it as just, we support you along your journey. So if you have no idea what you want to pivot into, those are things we can talk about. If you have an idea of what you want to pivot to, and you want to talk more about values, that is something we can talk about. If you want to talk about strategies, so those are things we can all support you with. I will say that the more kind of information that you have, and the research that you've done, and the reflection that you've done on yourself and where you want to go, is really helpful to bring into an appointment with us, so that we can kind of move you along and really make the most out of our appointments. But it's like some of the other panelists have mentioned, we can do practice interviews. That's a really big part of the strategy. We can talk about how to formulate intro emails to make connections, and to how to communicate and follow up with recruiters. So really anything along to support your journey. So you can do one-on-one appointments with us. We also host workshops. We have events and career fairs that we have employers come to. So really anything along your career journey, we're able to support you with.
Thanks, Erin. I know we're kind of getting close on time, so I think for the sake of that, if there is something that you have is kind of like what you look for as a recruiter, kind of like a last little tip for our audience, what is it that really makes a candidate stick out, either on their resume or on a cover letter, or something that you see from them?
So I will share, I think as of right now in the current demographic, right, it's a very, very high job market. There's a lot of jobs out there. I would say the first thing you have to do, I know it's like, oh, everyone, like every employer is desperate for, you know, candidates, you know, apply. Make sure your resume reflects that you meet the minimum requirements, at least. Once in a while, right, that there's like a couple of things that may not be what we call traditional. So like I'm hiring for tons and tons of roles, right? And so a lot of these roles, some people may not come from traditional background of that role, right? So make sure that when you're looking at applying, what I look for as a recruiter is, has this person done the work to show me that they have at least met the minimum requirements of the position? Any of that like preferred, type of things, that's fine if you don't meet those. But I would say at the minimum, make sure you're applying to jobs where you are able to redo your resume to show that that you're submitting a resume that you have met the minimum requirements. I think number 2 as well would be then, as recruiters, we look at so many resumes. We meet so many people. And so the key is, how do you stay memorable, right? So there's 2 parts. One is getting in front of the recruiter, right? You apply. How do you get the interview? And then once you get the interview, how do you get the job? So there's 2 separate skill sets, right? And so I think that you have to think about your resume almost like, how do I say this? Like an online dating profile. Okay, so we've all online dated, I think, I don't know, but like you're creating this profile, right? And you want people to be interested in you. But if you put everything on that dating profile, like what's the point of me going on a date with you to learn more about you, right? Like I already know everything about you. So your resume in the same way has to be enticing like that, right? Like you obviously don't want to spoon feed the recruiter everything about you, because then I don't have a reason to call you, right? Like, oh, I already know everything about this person. They're not a good fit, right? And then next. And so you want to write your resume in a way that, that entices a recruiter to say, this person's really interesting, or, oh, this person really stands out. I want to learn more. I want to know more about this person, right? Kind of like that online dating profile. Gosh, this is being recorded. So like think about things like that when you're writing your resume, that can entice a recruiter to want to call you. And so think about things outside of just, academics and work experience, right? How does being an athlete contribute to your resume, right? Does the job require someone who has discipline, can multitask, task management, project management, right? Being an athlete, I interview swimmers who told me, that this was their goal and they had to dedicate to eating a certain diet, right? Swimming, practicing 6 days a week, 6 hours a day, things like that. How does being the president of a club, a student organization, or being a leader in a nonprofit, further help us understand what you've done and who you are? How does it help you stand out? How does being in a sorority or fraternity, set you apart from others? So I think having that thing on your resume that makes a recruiter go, that's interesting, I want to talk to this person. Like I would say that has gotten me a lot, for sure. Like I'll have like this very traditional cybersecurity software engineering, and then captain of the polo club, or of the polo team, of the water polo team. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, how did he get into water polo? And, and then I started asking, like, how did he get exposed to computer science? What led him into his interest in computer science and things like that? So, so being creative, I think a little bit in your resume, like not too creative, but a little bit creative, I think helps you get in front of that recruiter faster too.
Tracy, any last parting tips and words for our audience?
I would say that to kind of go along with that, what you should not have, and MJ kind of touched on this a little bit. She said, don't be overly creative with your resume. True. I don't want to see these like crazy graphics and that take up 3/4 of a page. I don't want to see a 10-page resume, and I really don't want to see your picture. All sorts of things just kind of add up to what will make you go into the do not call file faster. So if you can keep it focused on the job, your projects, your skills that you have applicable, highlight how that's going to work for the job at hand. Really keep it focused like that. And that's I prefer that resume 10 times out of 10 over one that's trying to impress me with different color, text, graphics, pictures. I just don't want to see that. So.
I have to add too, a fun one I see all the time. Don't do this. Cumulative GPA versus major GPA. Don't put both. Don't only put your major GPA. Just put your normal GPA, because at the end of the day, that's what's on your transcript. I know some students have higher major GPA, which is just their GPA for their major classes, because I don't know, maybe they didn't do so hot in their general eds or whatever, and their cumulative GPA is lower. Don't do that. That's always a funny one for me. It's like, okay, well, what comes on your transcript? Okay, that's the GPA we want to see.
Well, thank you, ladies. I really appreciate all of this conversation tonight, and thank you everyone, or today, it's not tonight. Thank you for everybody for attending. Again, just a reminder, this is recorded, and so we will send this out via email along with a survey afterwards. Again, just here's some basic reminders about upcoming events and how to get involved. And especially with our BCC, that is something that's available to all alumni. So that's the end of this. And again, thank you everyone for attending.